The rain hit my skin like judgment. Cold, unrelenting, loud. My father's voice still rang louder than the thunder. "Get out," he roared, his hand still trembling from the slap he'd just given me. "You're no daughter of mine. Carry your bastard child and leave this house before I curse you properly." I stood barefoot in the mud, belly round beneath my faded gown, gripping a torn plastic bag that held my only clothes. The compound gate slammed shut behind me like a prison door. My stepmother watched from the veranda, her arms folded, lips curled in a smile that chilled me worse than the storm. Not a single soul in that house came to stop him. Not my brother. Not my auntie. No one. The baby kicked. Even he was shocked. I walked down the slope of our dusty village path, or what used to be dusty, now just thick, red mud swallowing my feet. The thunder above threatened to tear the sky open. I clutched my bag tighter and walked, half blinded by rain and tears, until the village faded behind me. I was 17. I was pregnant. And I was alone. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Let me tell you how I got there. Because you need to understand that this story doesn't begin in the rain. It begins with a song. 3 years ago, before my stomach began to swell, and before my voice ever touched a microphone, I was the girl who sang to lizards and chickens. My name is Halima, and if you had met me back then, you wouldn't have believed I'd end up anywhere near a stage. My father was a welder, a respected man in our village. People feared him as much as they praised his work. The fire in his tools matched the fire in his temper. When my mother died, giving birth to my younger brother, he married Auntie Bose, a woman whose heart was made of sharp glass. She hated me from the moment she moved in, and I never knew why. Still, I survived. I always found joy in little things, drawing faces in the sand with my toe, humming old Yoruba lullabies as I fetched water, pretending the rusted spoon in my hand was a microphone when I cooked rice on a firewood stand. I sang everything. My pain, my joy, my daydreams. But no one listened. No one but Ibrahim. Ibrahim was my father's apprentice. He had kind eyes and an awkward smile that made me laugh. He'd sit by the mango tree and pretend not to watch me sing to the wind. One day he clapped and said, "You have a voice like a bird that escaped its cage." We started talking, then laughing, then sneaking notes in cooking pots and under stools. He made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible in my own house. And before long, we were in love. Until the day I missed my period. When I told him, he looked like the ground had opened under his feet. He said he needed time. That was the last time I saw him. My stepmother found the pregnancy test first. Then the shouting started. Then the beating. Then the exile. That's how I ended up in the rain that night. The village behind me, and an uncertain world ahead. I walked for what felt like hours until I reached the express road where trucks thundered past, spraying mud on my shins. Lagos was far, too far, but I had nowhere else. Eventually, I saw a dim orange glow in the distance, a row of roadside kiosks. I approached one with plastic chairs stacked under a corrugated roof. The woman selling Accra looked at me like I was a ghost. She didn't ask me questions. She just pointed at the bench near her table. "Sleep," she said in Yoruba. "Before the police come." I did. Right there. Curled like a question mark on that hard bench. Belly aching. Head dizzy. Dreams empty. The next morning, I offered to wash her trays and sweep her area. She let me. That became our silent agreement. For every chore, she'd give me a little food. I stayed under her shed for 3 days. But nothing lasts. One morning, her husband came and shouted that I was attracting police walla. She gave me a loaf of bread and told me I had to go. And so began my wandering. Lagos is a city that devours you whole if you're not careful. I arrived at Ojota Garage within 400 in my pocket, the last of my father's secret savings I had hidden in my wrapper. I slept under an abandoned bus for a night, then another, then 2 weeks. No one cares for pregnant girls who smell like dust and dreams. I tried begging. I tried helping vendors carry bags. Some gave coins. Some gave curses. My belly grew. My feet swelled. And then it happened. My water broke. It was behind Balagan Market, near the gutter. Women screamed when they saw me fall. A girl in her 20s, holding a tray of socks, ran to me. "She's born in. Call somebody." I screamed, not from the pain, but from the humiliation. People watched like I was a street show. By the time I held my baby boy, wrapped in a nylon bag someone tossed me, I was no longer Halima the girl. I was Halima the ghost, the forgotten. I named him Zayed. He cried like he already knew the world was unfair. I spent the first week after his birth under a bridge with him on my chest. I used old newspapers to wrap us at night. I ate when I could. I sang lullabies not to soothe him, but to remind myself I still had a voice. One day, a boy with a Bluetooth speaker stopped near me. He said, "Auntie, sing that thing again. That song." I didn't even know he was listening. So I sang, just for fun, just to feel alive. He clapped. "Your voice, sweeto. I go record you. Make I upload him." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. That night, I sang a made-up song. About hunger. About cold. About dreams. He filmed it on his phone. 3 days later, I woke up to a vendor shaking me awake. "Halima, people day find you. You don't blow. Blow fire." I muttered, not understanding, until someone showed me the video. My voice. My tears. My baby in my arms. 1 million views. When you're a child in a small Nigerian village, dreams aren't things you say out loud. They are fragile like soap bubbles, easy for people to laugh at until they pop. But even as a little girl, I knew mine. I wanted to sing, not just sing in church like most village girls. I wanted my voice to travel far across towns and cities, maybe even beyond Nigeria. I didn't know about awards or fame. All I knew was that when I sang, I felt alive. The air seemed lighter. The pain in my chest, the one that came from missing my mother, would soften. We lived in a 2-room mud house with a corrugated iron roof that sang its own songs when the rain hit it. My father's welding shop was at the front of the compound. Sparks from his work would fly into the evening air, mixing with the smell of hot iron and burning fuel. He was a man people respected because he was good at his craft, but also feared because of his temper. After my mother died, giving birth to my younger brother, life changed. My father remarried quickly. That's when Auntie Bose came into the picture and into my nightmares. She was beautiful in the way market women admire. Tall, fair-skinned, always dressed in clean lace wrappers. But she had eyes that could freeze water. From the day she stepped into our home, she looked at me as if I were a stain she couldn't scrub out. Still, I sang. I sang while scrubbing clothes by the well. I sang while carrying cassava to the grinder. I sang to the chickens scratching in the dust. I didn't care if anyone thought I sounded silly. Singing was my hiding place. One afternoon, when I was about 14, I was humming an old Yoruba folk song while hanging laundry, and I didn't realize someone was watching me. "You sing like you mean it," a voice said. I turned to see Ibrahim, my father's new apprentice, leaning against the fence. He had a boyish face and the kind of smile that felt safe. His clothes smelled faintly of metal and oil from the workshop. I shrugged, embarrassed. "It's just a song." He tilted his head. "No, it's more than that. You make the words feel alive." No one had ever said that to me before, not even my father. Over the next few months, Ibrahim and I became friends. He was older, 20, and had dreams of his own. He wanted to open a big welding shop in Lagos someday. We would talk while I fetched water, his laughter making the chores less heavy. Sometimes, he'd hum along when I sang. One day, he taught me a song in Hausa that I didn't understand, but sang anyway, because I liked the way his eyes lit up when I did. We never talked about love, but something was there, growing like yam roots under the soil, unseen but alive. The first time I realized I truly liked him was on market day. My stepmother had sent me to buy palm oil, and I didn't see the Okada, motorbike, racing toward me until it was too close. Ibrahim pulled me back just in time. His hands gripped my arms, his face inches from mine. "You have to be careful," he scolded, but his voice was shaking. I laughed nervously. "Thank you." He let go slowly, like he didn't really want to. That same week, something shifted at home. My stepmother started making comments about how much time I spent near the workshop. "She's turning into a shameless girl," she told my father when she thought I couldn't hear. "She's just a child," my father replied, but his tone carried more annoyance than defense. I tried to ignore her words. I focused on singing, on daydreaming about leaving the village one day. I imagined being on a stage, even if the stage was just a wooden platform at a local festival. I imagined people clapping not because they knew me, but because my voice touched them. Then came the night everything cracked. It was Harmattan season, the air dry and cold. I was sitting behind the house, peeling groundnuts, when Ibrahim joined me. "You're quiet today," he said. I hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if my life will always be this small. "It won't," he said, looking straight at me. "You have something special, Halima. One day, people will hear you sing and they won't forget." I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was him. Weeks later it happened. I missed my monthly bleeding. I told myself it was stress. Then 2 months passed. My stepmother noticed before I could hide it. "What is wrong with you?" she demanded one morning, her eyes narrowing. "Nothing," I lied. But she wasn't convinced. She found the old pregnancy test I had bought from a chemist in the next town. She didn't even wait for my father to come home. She slapped me so hard my ears rang. By the time my father returned, she had already poisoned his mind. "She's carrying that apprentice's child," she hissed. "This is the shame you brought to your own house." I stood there, trembling, waiting for him to speak. "Is it true?" my father asked, his voice deadly calm. Tears filled my eyes. "Yes, but—" I didn't finish. His hand struck my face before I could explain. "Get out of my sight," he said. "Get out before I do something worse." That night, I waited for Ibrahim to come. He didn't. The next day, I learned he had left the village for Lagos without telling me. I think that hurt more than my father's slap. For days, my father ignored me. My stepmother made sure I did double the chores. The whispers in the village grew louder. By the time the rains came, my father's patience snapped entirely. He threw my bag at me. "Leave. Now." And that was the moment I found myself standing in the rain outside our gate, belly heavy, heart heavier. But in that pain, a seed was planted. The seed of survival. I didn't know it then, but the girl standing in the rain would one day stand on a stage. And when she did, she would sing like the whole world had wronged her, and she would make the world listen. The rain didn't stop the night I left my father's house. It came down in heavy sheets, drumming on my head as I walked along the narrow dirt road, clutching my worn bag against my chest. My wrapper was soaked, clinging to my skin. My sandals squelched with every step. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. The only person I thought might take me in was my mother's cousin in Lagos. I had seen her once at a burial years ago. She was loud and kind, but Lagos was far, and I had no money for transport. I decided I would find a way there, no matter what it took. By morning, I reached the small motor park in the next town. My hair was dripping, my stomach growled, and my belly, now unmistakably pregnant, made strangers' eyes linger too long. I approached a bus conductor. "Please, I need to go to Lagos." He looked me over, his eyes scanning from my wet hair to my swollen belly. "Money." I shook my head. He snorted. "No money, no seat." I should have expected that. But desperation makes you try anyway. I stood by the park for hours, watching buses load up, wondering if I could slip in unnoticed. My legs were trembling from hunger when a woman in a faded yellow headscarf approached me. "Where's your family?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "In the village." She studied me for a moment, then said, "I can help you get to Lagos, but you will work for me when we get there." Work. The word felt safe enough. I nodded quickly. "Yes, Ma." The trip to Lagos was long and hot. I sat squeezed between two strangers, my bag on my lap. The woman who had offered to help, she said her name was Madam Esther, spent most of the journey on her phone, speaking in quick Yoruba I couldn't follow. By the time we reached Lagos, night had fallen. The city was louder and brighter than I imagined. Horns blaring, street vendors shouting, the smell of roasted corn and petrol mixing in the air. "This way," Madam Esther said, leading me into a narrow street off the main road. Her house turned out to be a single room in a crumbling building. Inside, 3 other young girls sat on the floor, peeling oranges into a bucket. "You'll sleep here," she said, pointing to a thin mat. "And you'll sell fruit for me during the day. Whatever you make, you bring back to me." It wasn't what I had imagined, but it was shelter. The next morning, she handed me a tray of oranges balanced on a cloth ring for my head. "Go to the junction. Don't come back until everything is sold. The sun was already high as I walked to the busy road. I called out to passers-by, "Sweet orange, fresh orange." My voice cracked, but I kept calling. By midday, my feet ached. It was at that junction I first met Musa, a lanky man with a radio hanging from his shoulder. He stopped to buy 2 oranges, but instead of walking away, he asked, "You sing?" I blinked. "What? You were singing just now," he said. "Your voice, it's different." I hadn't even realized I was humming under my breath. I shrugged. "I just like music." He smiled. "There's a place you should see. A small club. They do open mic nights. You could sing there." I almost laughed. Me? In a club? I was just a pregnant village girl selling oranges. But something in his tone made me curious. That night, I told one of the other girls, Ngozi, about Musa's suggestion. She shook her head. "Be careful. Men like that, they promise things." I knew she was right, but I also knew that the thought of singing for strangers made my heart beat differently. 2 weeks passed. I worked from dawn till dark, selling oranges and giving most of the money to Madam Esther. My belly grew heavier. Sometimes my back ached so badly I thought I would collapse. But every day, as I stood at the junction, I hummed. It kept me from feeling invisible. One evening, Musa appeared again. This time, he didn't just buy oranges. He brought me a flyer. "There's a talent night this Saturday. You should come." "I'll be there." I stared at the flyer. It showed a small stage, a microphone, and the words, "Voices of Lagos, open mic night." I had no nice clothes, no money for transport, and no idea how to stand on a stage. But I couldn't stop staring at it. On Saturday, I told Madam Esther I was going to sell in a different spot. Instead, I followed the directions on the flyer. The club was just a shack with flashing lights and a few plastic chairs outside. Inside, it smelled of beer and fried meat. A tiny stage stood in the corner, a microphone on a stand. I froze at the doorway. I didn't belong here. Then I heard Musa's voice. "You came." He guided me to a chair. "You'll be fine. Just sing what you know." When my turn came, my knees were shaking so badly I thought I would fall. But then the first notes left my mouth. I sang an old Yoruba folk song my mother used to love. The chatter in the room faded. Heads turned. By the time I reached the last verse, the room was silent except for my voice. When I stopped, there was a pause, then clapping, louder than I had ever heard. In that moment, I wasn't the girl thrown out into the rain. I wasn't the pregnant orange seller. I was Halima, and I had just taken my first step from the streets to the stage. The applause was still ringing in my ears when I stepped off the tiny stage. My heart was hammering in my chest, my palms were damp, and my legs felt like they didn't quite belong to me. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the sound of clapping and cheering sink into my skin. "Halima." Musa was grinning like a proud brother. He clasped my shoulders. "I told you, you have something special." I didn't know how to respond. I had never been told I was special in my entire life. Not in school, not in the village, not even by Ibrahim. Before I could say anything, a short, round man with gold-rimmed glasses and a sharp blue suit appeared in front of me. "My name is Mr. Felix," he said, offering his hand. "I run talent shows across Lagos. That voice of yours, it could take you far." My fingers curled around the microphone in my hand. "Thank you, sir." He smiled, showing teeth so white they almost glowed in the dim club light. "I have a studio. You should come by next week. We'll do a demo. Free of charge." Free? The word sounded suspicious even in my own ears. He chuckled. "You'll see. We invest in raw talent." When I returned to Madam Esther's place that night, the other girls were already asleep. I lay on my mat, staring at the cracked ceiling. My body was exhausted, but my mind replayed the night over and over. The faces turned toward me, the stillness in the room when I sang, the sudden belief that maybe my life could be something more. Still, I remembered Ngozi's warning. Be careful. Men like that, they promise things. The next morning, as I sold oranges at the junction, Musa stopped by again. "Did Felix talk to you?" "Yes." "You should go. But don't go alone. I'll come with you." I studied his face. I wanted to trust him, but trust was something I had learned to hold close like a coin in my fist. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "Because I've seen too many good voices disappear. And because my sister could sing like you. She died before anyone heard her. Something softened in my chest. All right, I said. I'll go. Mr. Felix's studio was on the second floor of a building in Surelier. The sign outside was faded, and the stairwell smelled faintly of damp cement. Inside, there was a small room with egg cartons glued to the walls, a microphone on a stand, and a dusty keyboard in the corner. Not much, Felix said, catching my expression, but magic has been made here. He handed me a pair of headphones. Sing the song you did at the club. I closed my eyes and began. My voice filled the small room, raw and unpolished, but every note carried the weight of my journey. The rain-soaked road, the hunger, the betrayal. When I finished, Felix nodded slowly. You have something, but you need training. And you need a look. A look? Yes. People listen with their eyes first. You'll need clothes, hair, maybe even some adjustments. His gaze lingered on me in a way that made my skin crawl. I took a step back. I just want to sing. He smiled thinly. Of course. But remember, the city is full of singers. The ones who rise are the ones willing to give more than their voice. I didn't answer, but the meaning behind his words followed me all the way back to Madam Esther's. That night, Ngozi pulled me aside. I heard about Felix, she said. He has helped some people, but others, they end up broken. Be careful, Halima. This city doesn't care about your dreams unless it can use them. I thought about that as I lay on my mat, the baby shifting inside me. The stage had lit something in me I couldn't put out, but I would not lose myself in the process. The weeks that followed were a blur. Musa helped me get small gigs, weddings, a restaurant in Yaba, even a birthday party for a wealthy family. I earned tips, enough to buy myself a better wrapper and put aside a little for the baby. But every time I sang, I noticed Felix somewhere in the crowd, watching. Sometimes he'd wave, sometimes he'd beckon me over, but I always found an excuse to leave early. One night, after a performance at the restaurant, he cornered me outside. You're wasting time, he said. With my connections, you could be on the radio in 3 months. But you keep running. I'm not ready, I told him. He leaned closer, his cologne cloying in the humid air. No one is ever ready. They just decide what they're willing to give. I walked away, my heart pounding. 2 days later, Madam Esther announced that I would no longer be selling at the junction. I have other plans for you, she said, her tone unreadable. That night, she took me to a high-end bar on Victoria Island. The room was filled with men in fine suits, women in sequin dresses, and music so loud it made my ribs vibrate. You'll sing here tonight, she said. I stepped onto the stage, the bright lights blinding me for a second. Then I began to sing. The room changed. Conversations paused. Glasses stopped clinking. All eyes were on me. When I finished, the applause was louder than anything I'd heard before. But as I stepped down, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Felix was in the corner, talking to Madam Esther, both of them glancing in my direction. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about their whispered conversation, the way they smiled like they had just made a deal. It hit me. In Lagos, talent was a currency, but so was control. And I was in the middle of a trade I hadn't agreed to. I promised myself one thing before the sun rose. Whatever was coming next, I would not let anyone own me. The morning after the Victoria Island performance, the smell of frying akara drifted through Madam Esther's compound, but it didn't stir my appetite. I sat on the wooden bench outside my small room, peeling an orange slowly, my fingers sticky with juice. My mind was still replaying the way Madam Esther and Felix had leaned toward each other, their whispers drowned out by the applause. Ngozi came to sit beside me, folding her arms. You didn't sleep, did you? I shook my head. Did you see them talking last night? Her gaze darkened. I did, and I know what it means. Madam Esther doesn't do favors for free. If Felix wants you, she will make sure she profits. A wave of unease rolled over me. Profits how? Ngozi hesitated. Let's just say she owns more than your stage time when she decides you're her investment. By afternoon, Madam Esther called me into her office, a small room with peeling cream paint and the faint smell of mothballs. A fan spun lazily overhead. Halima, she said, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes, last night was a success. That bar will have us back. I nodded cautiously. Felix tells me you have real potential. she continued. He wants to take you to Port Harcourt for a recording. Big producers. Big money. This could be your breakthrough. Port Harcourt. I had never even been beyond Lagos and my village, and now they were talking about putting me on a plane? What would I have to do? I asked. She tilted her head, as though amused by the question. Sing. Charm. Make connections. The rest you'll figure out. Her words dripped with implication, and I felt the walls of the room press closer. That night, I found Musa waiting for me at the junction. I told him everything. Halima, be careful, he said. Felix is like oil on water. He makes everything look smooth, but you can't trust him. Port Harcourt is far. If something goes wrong there, it will be harder for you to get help. But if this is my chance, I whispered. Then you take it, Musa said, but you take it on your terms. 2 days later, I found myself at a high-rise hotel in Victoria Island, summoned by Felix. The reception was all glass and marble, the air smelling faintly of lemon polish. Felix was in the lounge, sipping from tall glass. You're looking radiant, he said, his eyes flicking over my simple dress. We'll need to work on your image before Port Harcourt. I haven't agreed to go, I told him. He chuckled. You will, because you're smart enough to know that opportunities like this don't wait. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. And because I can make sure you never have to sell oranges again. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. But before I could reply, a tall man in a tailored gray suit approached. Felix introduced him as Kalu, his sponsor. Kalu's handshake was firm, his smile polite, but his eyes lingered on me too long. Felix tells me you'll be in Port Harcourt soon, he said. I'm looking forward to working closely with you. The weight of his gaze was like cold oil on my skin. That night, back in my room, I sat cross-legged on my mat, the baby shifting inside me. I pressed a hand to my stomach. We have to be careful, I whispered. Ngozi slipped in quietly. I know what they're planning, she said. Felix owes Kalu money. He's offering you as part of the deal. They'll dress it up as opportunity, but it's really about control. I felt the floor tilt under me. So what do I do? She took my hands. You sing. You let them think they own you. But you keep your real plan close. Legos can give you everything and take it away in the same breath. You have to learn to breathe in its rhythm without choking. The night before the supposed Port Harcourt trip, Musa came to see me again. He had a small, battered guitar slung over his shoulder. This was my sister's, he said, placing it in my hands. She never got to use it on stage. If you go, take this with you. Play for yourself, not for them. Remember who you are. I felt tears sting my eyes. When the morning came, Felix's driver arrived in a black SUV. I climbed in, my wrapper neatly tied, my heart steady. But as we drove through the city, passing hawkers with trays balanced on their heads and Danfo buses honking in the chaos, I realized something. They might control the stage, the lights, and the money, but my voice was still mine. And before this was over, they would learn exactly what that meant. The journey to Port Harcourt began before sunrise. The black SUV pulled out of Lagos while the city was still half asleep, the streets littered with the ghosts of last night's noise. Felix sat in the back with me, his cologne sharp and overwhelming in the enclosed space. Kalu was in the front passenger seat, talking low into his phone in a language I didn't recognize. I had the guitar Musa gave me resting across my lap, my fingers brushing the worn strings whenever the silence felt too heavy. You like Port Harcourt, Felix said, glancing at me. People there know talent when they see it. No small-minded village gossip. Is it safe? I asked quietly. He smirked. Safe enough, if you stay close to me. The road stretched endlessly, past petrol stations, roadside food stalls, and the thick green of the Niger Delta creeping closer. My stomach tightened with every mile. We arrived at a sprawling white building on the edge of the city, part hotel, part nightclub, with tinted glass windows and men in dark suits standing like statues near the entrance. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and faint cigarette smoke. Madam Esther was already there, lounging on a velvet sofa with 2 other women, both dressed like they belonged on glossy magazine covers. Halima, she called, her smile too wide. Welcome to your future. She took me upstairs to a private suite. The room was luxurious, king-size bed, mirrored walls, a view of the city below. But there was something about the way the door locked from the outside that made my chest tighten. "You'll rest here," she said. "Tonight, you perform for some special guests. Impress them, and the city will open to you." Evening came quickly. The club was dim, lit mostly by blue and gold spotlights. A small stage sat at the far end, a microphone waiting like an open mouth. Felix handed me a glittering dress. "Put this on," he said. "It's your moment." I changed, feeling the fabric cling too closely to my growing belly. When I stepped out, Kalu was at the bar, his eyes sweeping over me with the same unsettling weight as before. The crowd that night was not like Lagos. They were wealthier, quieter, more watchful. I sang 3 songs, my voice threading through the room. Applause came, but it felt muted, controlled, as if they were measuring me for something other than music. After my set, Felix led me to a back room. A round table sat in the center, bottles of champagne and trays of food scattered across it. 3 men were waiting, strangers, all with the kind of smiles that hid more than they revealed. "This is Halima," Felix said. "She's going to be the next big thing." One of the men gestured for me to sit. "We invest in talent," he said, his voice smooth. "But talent must also invest in us." The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. I thought of Musa's warning, of Ngozi's voice in my ear telling me to keep my real plan close. I smiled faintly. "I'm here to sing. If that's not enough, I'm in the wrong room." Felix's smile froze for a moment. That night, I didn't sleep in the suite. I waited until the hallway was quiet, slipped out with my guitar, and found the service stairs. The cool night air hit me like a blessing as I stepped outside into the shadow of the building. Port Harcourt glittered beyond the gates, loud and alive. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew staying meant losing myself completely. I walked until my feet ached, until the noise of the club faded behind me. And somewhere deep inside, a decision settled. I would take the stage again, but on my terms, not theirs. If you've been following Halima's journey and want to see how she fights back against the forces trying to control her, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful African stories, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because the real twist is still to come. The streets of Port Harcourt at night had a heartbeat of their own. Loud, restless, unpredictable. Neon lights flickered over shop fronts. Motorcycle taxis zipped past, and the air was thick with the mingled smells of grilled fish, engine fumes, and the river. I walked fast, clutching my guitar like it was the last safe thing in my life. My sandals slapped against the pavement, my heart still pounding from the way I'd slipped past the club's back exit. I didn't have a plan, only a direction, away from Felix. Every few steps, I glanced behind me, half expecting Kalu to appear out of the shadows. But all I saw were strangers, traders shutting down their stalls, young men clustered by food vendors, a group of children chasing each other through the glow of a street lamp. A voice cut through the hum of the night. "You lost, sister." I turned to see a man about my age leaning against the wall near a tiny roadside bar. He had a batter trumpet slung across his chest and a wide, easy smile. "No," I lied. "I'm just looking for somewhere to sit." He nodded toward a cluster of plastic chairs near a group of musicians, a drummer, a guitarist, and a saxophone player. "We're about to play. You can sit, or you can join." Something in his voice wasn't threatening. It was warm, open. I sat. When they started playing, the street changed. The air vibrated with sound. People slowed down to listen, and a few even danced in the road. My fingers itched for my guitar. The trumpet player, who introduced himself as Yemi, noticed. "You play?" I hesitated, but then I pulled the guitar from its case. My first chord cut through the noise of passing cars. Then I sang. It wasn't a performance for rich men in dark suits. It wasn't rehearsed or calculated. It was raw, unpolished, and it was mine. The small crowd cheered, tossing Naira notes into an open guitar case. For the first time in weeks, I felt like a person again, not someone's investment. After the set, Yemi handed me a bottle of cold water. "You've got a voice that belongs on a real stage. My cousin runs a radio show here. You should go." A spark lit in me. A radio show meant exposure, and exposure meant Felix would hear about it. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Musa's phone lit up with Felix's name. "Where is she?" Felix's voice was low and dangerous. "I don't know," Musa said, though his hands trembled. "You better find her, Musa. If she embarrasses me in Port Harcourt, you'll regret the day you ever called me." Musa hung up and stared at the wall. He knew Halima was running for her life and for her music, and now he was caught in the middle. 2 days later, I sat in a small radio booth with a microphone in front of me and Yemi giving me a thumbs up from behind a glass. The host leaned in. "We have a special guest tonight. A voice from Lagos, here to bless Port Harcourt. Halima, tell us your story." I smiled into the mic, it's still being written. When I sang, I imagined my father hearing me somewhere, wondering how the girl he'd thrown out was now filling the airwaves. As I left the station that night, Yemi's cousin handed me a card. "There's a talent showcase next week. No agents, no contracts, just music. If you want it, it's yours." I took it, feeling the weight of possibility. But I also knew Felix wouldn't let this go unanswered. Somewhere out there, his anger was already moving toward me. If Halima's fight for her music and her freedom inspires you, don't just listen. Like this video, drop a comment telling us what you think she should do next, and subscribe so you can watch her journey unfold in real time. Port Harcourt's air was heavy that evening, thick with the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I was walking back from a small food stall where I'd bought fried plantain and fish when I noticed the quiet. Too quiet. The street that usually buzzed with the sound of vendors shouting and children laughing felt wrong. Then I saw them. 2 black SUVs parked half on the pavement, their engines idling, windows tinted so dark they looked like they could swallow light. My heart lurched. "Felix." I turned down an alley, clutching my paper bag like it could hide me, but a voice called out behind me. "Halima." It was Yemi, jogging toward me. "We've got a problem. Some men came to the radio station looking for you. They asked questions, the kind you don't want people asking." My stomach tightened. "Felix." Yemi nodded grimly. "One of them slipped up. Mentioned Lagos." By the time I reached the small flat where I'd been staying, Musa was sitting on the front steps. His shirt was drenched with sweat, his eyes darting from side to side like a trapped animal. "He's here," Musa said without preamble. "Felix. And he's not alone." I glanced past him to see 2 men leaning against the wall across the street, smoking, watching. Musa's voice cracked. "He gave me a choice. Bring you to him tonight, or he trailed off, but I could imagine the rest." We didn't have time to plan. I grabbed my guitar, a small bag of clothes, and we slipped out the back, weaving through narrow alleys until we reached a noisy street market. The chaos there felt like safety, but safety didn't last long. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker from somewhere near the market center. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have a special announcement." Curious heads turned. A small crowd gathered around a stage set up near a row of fruit stalls. On it stood Felix, wearing a white suit that gleamed under the harsh market lights. He smiled when he saw me in the crowd. It wasn't warm. "This woman," he said, pointing at me, "owes me more than she can ever pay. She is a liar, a thief of contracts. And tonight, I am here to collect what belongs to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My hands clenched around my guitar. Before I could move, 2 of his men stepped down from the stage and began pushing through the crowd toward me. Yemi appeared at my side, gripping my arm. "If they get you now, it's over." We ran, past stalls of yam and pepper, past shouting vendors, past the smell of roasting suya. Felix's voice echoed behind us, promising consequences. By the time we ducked into an abandoned shop, my chest was heaving. Musa staggered in a moment later, his face pale. "I can't keep protecting you," Musa said. "He's got too much reach here." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, listening to the hum of distant traffic, replaying Felix's words in my mind. He wasn't just after me. He was after my voice, my future. The next morning, Yemi knocked on the door with news. The radio performance went viral. Someone in Lagos saw it. A woman named Madam Bisi. She runs a music foundation for women. She wants to meet you. She's coming to Port Harcourt tomorrow. Hope flickered in my chest, but it was tangled with fear. If Madam Bisi could find me, so could Felix. The next day, the meeting took place in a quiet cafe by the river. Madam Bisi was tall, regal, with a voice like smooth velvet. She listened as I told her everything. The music, the contracts, the threats. When I finished, she leaned forward. I can get you on stage in Lagos. A real stage. But it will mean going back. And it will mean facing him. I swallowed hard. Lagos was where everything had broken. But it was also where everything could be rebuilt. I'll do it, I said. Her smile was small, but full of certainty. Then get ready. We leave in 2 days. That night, as I walked back to the flat, the rain finally came. Warm drops soaking my hair and my dress. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel small. Felix could chase me, threaten me, humiliate me in markets. But I was still here. I was going to take back my music on my terms. If you believe in second chances and fighting for what's yours, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us if you think Halima is ready to face Felix in Lagos. Your voice matters in her journey. The road into Lagos always felt like a beast with too many eyes. From the moment the bus crossed into the city limits, I could feel it watching me. The chaos, the noise, the millions of people moving like they all had somewhere urgent to be. Lagos had once been my home, but now every corner felt like a trap Felix might spring. Madam Bisi sat beside me, regal even the cramped bus seat, scrolling through her phone. Remember, she said without looking up, we're here for your music, not your fear. The stage is your protection. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I nodded. We got off at Oberland, and the heat hit me like a slap. Street hawkers swarmed the sidewalks, shouting prices for everything from gala sausage rolls to knockoff sunglasses. Madam Bisi's driver was waiting in a black Toyota, and within minutes we were winding through the tight roads toward Ikoyi, where she had arranged for me to stay. Her house was a sprawling colonial-style building with whitewashed walls and a wide balcony. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender. It felt like another world compared to the cramped flat in Port Harcourt. You'll rehearse here, she said, leading me to a small music room. The walls were lined with soundproof panels, and in the center sat a microphone, a stool, and a music stand. You have 3 days before the Women's Rising Festival. 3 days to make them remember your name. That night, Musa called. They know you're back, he said without preamble. My heart skipped. Felix. He's been asking questions in Surreal. Someone saw him at a club bragging that he'll finish you before you sing a single note. I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you telling me this? Because Musa hesitated, his voice low. I'm done running errands for him. I've seen what he's done to people. I'm going to help you. I wanted to believe him, but trust was something I no longer gave easily. The next day, rehearsals began in earnest. Madam Bisi brought in a small band, a drummer, a keyboardist, and a backup singer named Titi who had a voice like honey. We worked for hours, shaping the songs, finding the right keys, tightening every transition. In the middle of rehearsal, a delivery arrived, a bouquet of deep red roses wrapped in black paper. No card. I didn't need one. Felix had found me. That evening, Madam Bisi held a dinner for a few industry contacts. Laughter filled the dining room, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows, scanning for movement in the shadows outside. Halfway through the meal, a waiter leaned down to whisper in Madam Bisi's ear. Her expression hardened. She stood, her voice calm but firm. Halima, go upstairs. Now. I obeyed without question, slipping into the guest room and locking the door. From the balcony, I watched as 2 men in dark clothing lingered near the gate, talking to the security guard. Eventually, they left, but the pit in my stomach stayed. On the morning of the festival, Lagos felt electric. Posters with my face, taken from the viral radio video, were plastered on walls near Tafwa, Balewa Square. Crowds of women in colorful Ankara dresses streamed toward the venue, the air thick with excitement. Backstage, I could hear the distant roar of the audience. Madam Bisi checked her watch. You're on in 20 minutes. Musa appeared suddenly, out of breath. We have a problem. Felix is here. He bribed one of the stage managers. They're planning to cut the power during your set. My chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to finish what you started, Musa said. I have a way to stop them, but it will expose me. If I do this, there's no going back for me. I stared at him, my mind racing. The crowd outside was chanting, impatient. My name was about to be called. Musa, I began, but before I could finish, the announcer's voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Halima. The stage lights blazed alive. My cue had come, and somewhere in the darkness beyond those lights, I knew Felix was watching. If you believe Halima should step onto that stage no matter the risk, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Should Musa betray Felix now, or wait until after her performance? The air backstage was thick with heat and nerves. The hum of the crowd outside was almost deafening now, a pulsing wave of voices and drums. Somewhere in that crowd, Felix was lurking like a shadow that refused to let me go. Madam Bisi's hand was firm on my shoulder. You're ready, Halima. Forget him. Remember why you're here. But I couldn't forget him. Not after the roses, not after the threats. And now Musa's warning echoed in my mind. They'll cut the power. The stage manager gave me a thumbs up. 1 minute. I stepped toward the curtain, my heartbeat syncing with the bass thumping from the speakers. My outfit shimmered under the warm glow of the backstage lights. A flowing emerald green dress stitched with gold threads, Ankara patterns woven into the fabric. It wasn't just a dress. It was armor. As I tightened my grip on the microphone, Musa appeared at my side. His chest rose and fell quickly, sweat dripping down his temple. It's now or never, he said. If I pull this, Felix won't be able to touch you. But once I do, I can't go back to him. I stared into his eyes. There was fear there, but also something else, loyalty. Do it, I whispered. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, Lagos, give it up for Halima. The curtain drew back, and the flood of light hit me like a tidal wave. Thousands of faces stared back. The crowd stretched far into Tafwa Balewa Square, the night sky above them glittering with distant stars. Some people stood on chairs to see better. Others waved colorful scarves in the air. I took a deep breath, brought the mic to my lips, and began to sing. The first notes spilled out, trembling but pure. The band followed, the drummer's hands dancing on the skin, the keyboardist weaving soft chords beneath my melody. Then, halfway through the first verse, it happened. A flicker. The stage lights dimmed. The microphone crackled. The crowd's murmurs grew. I saw Felix in the distance, standing near the sound booth, smirking. My chest tightened, until I caught sight of Musa, crouched behind the main sound control. He yanked something from a board, slammed a new cable into place, and the entire stage roared back to life. Felix's smirk vanished. I didn't miss a beat. My voice soared higher, stronger. I sang not just for me, but for every girl who had been silenced, shamed, or thrown away. My story was in every lyric. The night my father pushed me out into the street, the months of scraping by in Port Harcourt, the humiliation Felix tried to bury me under. The crowd was with me now, clapping in rhythm, swaying to the beat. Phones rose in the air, capturing every moment. By the final chorus, I wasn't just performing. I was claiming. When the last note faded, the crowd erupted. People were screaming my name, stomping their feet, chanting for more. But before I could take my bow, there was movement at the edge of the stage. Felix was pushing past security, his face twisted in fury. You think you can embarrass me? He shouted. His voice carried even without a microphone. Madam Bisi stepped forward, blocking him. It's over, Felix. The police were there in seconds. Musa must have called them, and judging by the way they went straight for Felix, they had been waiting for the right moment. As they dragged him away, he caught my eye. There was no more power in his gaze, no more control, only rage and defeat. After the show, the square emptied slowly, but people still stopped me for photos and hugs. Some whispered, "You gave us hope tonight." Others said, "Your voice is our story." Madam Bisi beamed like a proud mother. You didn't just survive, Halima. You own that stage. I glanced over at Musa, who stood quietly near the equipment cases. His betrayal of Felix meant he couldn't go back to his old life, but when our eyes met, I knew he didn't regret it. Thank you, I told him. For what? He asked. For giving me the chance to finish my song. 3 days later, my story was everywhere: radio, TV, Instagram. The video of my performance had gone viral, and the Women's Rising Festival announced me as the headliner for next year. But the moment that stayed with me wasn't the applause, or the fame, or even Felix's arrest. It was the second I stepped on stage knowing that no matter who tried to silence me, I had already won. If Halima's journey from the streets to the stage moved you, don't just scroll away. Hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell us in the comments, if you were Halima, would you have let Musa help you, knowing it could destroy his life too? Your voice matters, just like hers.